Welcome to koam-presents, a podcast produced by KOAM News Now and the 4 states' most watched news team.
Rough Country is at Carnes Pro Tire. Complement your truck or Jeep with a new Rough Country lift kit or protect your truck with a retractable or tri-fold bed cover. Only at Carnes Pro Tire and Auto Center, just south of Baxter Springs.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Pigskin Podcast number 7. On this episode, Neosho. Got a trio of players putting up huge numbers. We're going to talk about that. A big week for the Seneca Indians. They got a shot at winning a league title. Pittsburgh State gets a big win over Northwest Missouri State, while Missouri Southern takes care of business against Lincoln. The Galena Bulldogs hand Parsons their first loss. We're going to talk about that. And Mike Snow from ESPN 100.7 joins us to talk football and probably going to make fun of me and wearing makeup, but that's how it goes. As always, we got a lot to get to, so we're not going to waste any time. Give me the music and let's get going. All right, guys, we're on the back nine of the high school football season here. Playoffs right around the corner. We're just a few weeks away. It's my favorite time of the year. These games, they're starting to mean something. Before we dive in, I want to thank our sponsors real quick. Jock's Niche, Carnes Pro Tire, Neosho Memorial Regional Medical Center, and McGavern Financial Group. Of course, without those people, I wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be hearing this podcast. We appreciate the support for local sports. All right, we had some good games last week. I'm going to talk for a second about the one I was at. It was Galena hosting Parsons. Actually, I was going to go to 2 games. I was going to shoot that Galena-Parsons game, then get on down to Riverton for Riverton-Cherryville. But this Parsons-Galena game, it was so good, I couldn't make it down the road. I couldn't leave because I knew it was going to be a good finish. But Galena did go on to beat Parsons 14-13. That was Parsons' first loss of the season. Going into that one, the Vikings were 5-0. Galena was 3-2. And Parsons jumped out to a 13-0 lead at halftime. But Galena rallied in the second half, got a touchdown on the first drive of the second half, failed the 2-point conversion, but got another touchdown later. They actually got that 2-point conversion, and that was how they won the final score, 14-13. Couple things here. First off, that was Dawson Mooney's first game back for Galena from injury, and man, he's such a difference maker for that football team. He scored that second touchdown of the evening and then got the 2-point conversion after that to put Galena in front 14-13. He brought toughness to the team. He brought energy to the team. Man, after he scored that touchdown and that 2-point conversion, the guy, he had to be settled down a little bit. He was awfully wound up, but Mooney's a guy that Galena's missed, and for the Bulldogs, having him back for the rest of the season and the playoffs, I don't think you can really overstate how important he is, really for Galena on both sides of the ball. Second, I talk about Galena being a tough kind of run-first team all the time, and you know, every year when we do the season previews for Galena, you know, I don't know what it is about Galena. It probably has something to do with Coach Sarwinski. It probably has something to do with the town. I don't have any idea, but in my whole career here, Galena is always one of the toughest, most physical teams to play. And I just know that whoever plays them on a Friday night wakes up on Saturday morning and goes, we just played Galena. Like, I know they still feel it on Saturday, but man, they turned that second half into an ugly Galena high school football game, man. It was, I swear, they were down 13-0, and they said, line them up. Let's see who's tougher. I mean, Parsons was scoring like 50 points a game or something like that, 40, 50 points a game. And they held Parsons to 13, shut him out in the second half. Galena brought Parsons down into the mud and said, you're playing our game, taking the gloves off. This is a boxing match. We're going to roll around in the mud and see who walks out of here. And it was, I told Coach Sarwinski for Galena midway through the fourth, I said, man, you made this look like a Galena high school football game. And he said, yeah, I know. That's exactly how Galena wants to play. And that's exactly how Galena's won football games since my time started here. Last thing on this one, Tyler Little, he's so good, and they do so many different things with him. You see tweets and videos about him all the time, about college offers and what. I don't have an answer. I'm not a college recruiter. I don't know. I just watch the guy play football a lot, and I don't know. If I was a coach, I would be all over this kid. They line him up all over the place. He played I mean, he played tight end. He took direct snaps. He was lined up out wide. There was a time, I'm pretty sure Zane Turner, the quarterback, did not know. All he knew when he let go of this ball was that Tyler Little was down there somewhere. And it's like that meme like they used to make with Patrick Mahomes, like, F it, Tyreek Hill's down there somewhere. That's how I felt like Zane Turner was on Friday night with Tyler Little. And he went up and made plays. And so they lined him up a little bit of everywhere. This dude should have a truckload full of envelopes and offers, from coaches saying, what do we got to do to get you here? He's a football player, man. He's a big kid. Like, I'm not a big person, and I get caught standing beside him, and I don't want to stand beside him because it makes me feel so small. He's such a big and tough kid. Speaking of that throw, that one that I was talking about, I posted it on Twitter, that Zane Turner throw to Tyler Little, where it was just like, he's down there somewhere. You should go check out that play. On the Missouri side, we got Neosho and Webb City this week, and in the past few years, not going to lie, we probably would not have gotten to this game on this podcast if we were doing it the last few years, but Neosho's got something pretty good going right now. I'm not sitting here saying Neosho's going to go beat Webb City or whatever, but what I am saying is Webb City better be careful here. Listen, a little story time. I got a message from a fan after Friday night. Maybe it was Saturday morning. It's football season. It all kind of blends together for me. If it's not Sunday, then that's pretty much the only day I'm off during football season. So if it's not Sunday, then it's another work day. But anyways, I got a message from a Neosho fan, and I don't know if it was Jared Seiler's grandpa, uncle, brother. I don't know, but his last name was Seiler, so I'm just assuming that they're related. But he said, why don't you give Jared Seiler some love? He's the state's leading rusher. And I was like, first off, I knew he was having a good year. I didn't know he was leading this town. That's my job. I apologize. I didn't know he was having such a monster season. So after this message, I was like, yeah, you're probably right. I should probably do something with this and look into it. And what I found, look, I knew Neosho was having a good season. I knew their offense was scoring a lot of points. We talk about them every Friday night. I had not got into the numbers. And so, listen, Jared Seiler, running back for Neosho, he is the leading rusher in Missouri high school football right now. They have the leading rusher in Seiler, the leading passer in Quentin Hughes, and the leading receiver in the state in Isaiah Green. Neosho High School. Seiler has 1,618 yards to lead the state, 231 yards per game, 21 touchdowns, and he's averaging 7 yards per carry. If you're coaching, you got a guy averaging 7 yards per carry. I don't know how you do anything else but give the guy the rock, but he's not the only weapon, as I just mentioned, for Neosho. Quentin Hughes, the quarterback, leading passer in Missouri, 2,184 passing yards, 22 touchdowns. He's averaging 312 yards per game, and all that's impressive. But to me, even more impressive than that, is completing 72% of his passes. That's really good for a high school quarterback. And then we talk about Isaiah Green on the outside wide receiver. He's got 83 catches in 7 games, 1,100 yards, 11 touchdowns. He's averaging 162 a game. These guys, like I said, I knew they were having a great season. I didn't know that they had 3 guys leading the states in their categories. I knew they were scoring points. I guess I just didn't put the pieces together that guys had to be scoring those points. But those guys, they've already helped Neosho win 4 games. They're 4-3. It's the first time they've won at least 4 games since 2018, and they're not even done. Here's their head coach, Brandon Towdy, on this season and his big-time offensive weapons.
We've got a really good group of kids, and so, they play really well off of each other, and we've been able to keep drives alive, being able to stay balanced, throwing the ball and running the ball, and it all starts with our guys up front. We have a really good offensive line that's worked extremely hard to protect those guys and open up holes, and all of our players are just very unselfish, and they don't really care who has the ball as long as we're getting in the end zone. We're excited about where we're at as a program. We've set the goal just to get better every single day, and so we feel like we're doing that. So we were able to pick up 4 wins, and but it's never really been about setting a number of wins for us. It's more about just continuing to get better every single day, and we're hoping that here down the stretch, getting to week 10 in district time, we're playing our best football.
We talked with Coach Towdy about each one of those guys, Seiler, Hughes, and Green. You can actually check out that full story, that full write-up on the sports page at koamnewsnow.com. Elsewhere in Missouri, got Seneca at McDonald County this week. Seneca 7-0 with 2 games left in the regular season. And they've already beaten Lamar this season. Now, I want to talk about Coach Hilburn for Seneca. He came over to Seneca after being an assistant at Carthage. And so I did a little digging on this too, just to get it right. Here's what he's done since he took over that job in Seneca. This was a 3-win team the year before he got there. His first year, they go 8-5, win a district title, and make it to the state quarterfinals. And so you're like, yeah, that's good. That's really good. Team got hot at the right time, good at the end of the year. So they backed that up by this year, going 7-0 to start the season. They beat Lamar. They beat the best Class 2 team in the state, and they've won 11 of their last 12 dating back to last October. What he's done there and what that team has done there, it's awesome. It's awesome. Seneca's a football town. If you've ever been to Seneca, ever caught a football game in Seneca, the fans, right there behind the end zone, it's always packed, home side and road side. It's one of my favorite views. I've taken my wife down to Seneca literally just to be like, here's what it looks like around the Seneca football field, so she has an idea when I was like, this is really pretty, with the hills and the trees back there and everything. Anyways, Seneca's a great football atmosphere. It's a great football town, and, man, it's awesome to see what they have going on there right now. And I can't wait to see what they do in the playoffs. But before they get to the playoffs, they got 2 big games to wrap up the regular season, facing McDonald County this week. They'll play Nevada next week. They got a huge opportunity ahead of them, especially this week. Here's Coach Hilburn.
The fun kind of starts this week because from now on, we're playing for something big every week. If we win this week, it locks up the Big 8 West title, and we think it locks up the 1 seed in our district as well. And if we win this week, it also allows us a chance to play for that first undefeated regular season for the first time here in 20 years. So from here on out, every game's huge for us.
So a big opportunity ahead this week for the Seneca Indians, looking to claim that district or that league championship. And so far this season, they certainly have earned their shot at claiming that. Now we have some big games. Of course, this is where I'm going to be. Joplin at Carthage. Both of those teams 6-1, 2 different styles. I love when we get these like Carthage Webb City Joplin, Carthage Joplin games. The Nixas, the Nixa Webbs, the Nixa Carthage. There's so I like to go to games where there's, and I get to pick where I go, so I get it. See a lot of good teams and a lot of good players. But I love these games where there are so many good players on both sides. The 2 coaches on either side are so good. The fan bases travel. The fan bases are loud. The student sections, will travel. This is like what high school football is all about in Southwest Missouri. If you have a chance, if you're around, man, if you're just looking for something to do, Joplin at Carthage on Friday. It's going to be a cool atmosphere, and you're going to see some really, really good football players out there on Friday night. In Southeast Kansas, Frontenac is going to be at Parsons. Now, 2 weeks ago, I thought I knew, I thought I had a pretty good idea about how this game was going to go, but Frontenac's found their groove, man. The Raiders are 4-2 now. They beat Columbus 35-8 a couple weeks ago, then beat Baxter Springs last week 51-7. Now, those 2 wins come after getting beat at home 35-0 by Girard. I was at that game. It was not the prettiest game. In fact, it was the opposite. It was maybe the not prettiest game I've seen at Frontenac High School. But man, since then, I'm not a math major. 35, 51, 86-15. They've outscored the last 2 opponents 86-15. Now they are. Now that they got 4 wins, it looks like they've turned this thing around. Now, coming into the year, we talked about this on an earlier episode of the podcast. Frontenac lost 18 seniors, and we talked with Mark Smith on this podcast about how special that group was last year, how many good players there were, how special that group was to them, Coach Smith, the town. They lost 18 seniors, and so you knew there were going to be a lot of new guys on the field to start the season for Frontenac. And, we do our predictions in our Pigskin Preview magazine, and I was like, I don't know. This could be I'm serious. I was sitting there thinking this could be a 3-win team, 4, 8. I don't know. So, the guys that these players were setting behind last year were so good, and you just never know if they're going to have players just as good behind them, or if they will be just as good eventually, or, maybe they're not anywhere close. But these guys have got to figure it out in Frontenac, and one of the things, when I do these predictions, I thought, I don't know what they're going to look like. I don't even think they know what they're going to look like in the first few weeks of the season, but I do know by the end of the season, it's kind of like Webb City. Webb City all the time talks about, Coach Ryder talks about playing your best football at the end of the season when districts get here. I feel like that always happens with Frontenac. I feel like it always happens with Webb City. I'm not calling Frontenac Webb City. Webb City is kind of in a class of their own. Not my opinion. Nobody else in Missouri has won 16 state championships. It's just a fact. But Frontenac, through the trajectory of the season, you always know Mark Smith is going to get that thing figured out. It's going to be an interesting game, I think. Plus, Parsons is coming off their first loss to Galena, like we talked about a little bit ago. So they're going to be motivated to come out and play. I'm honestly just really curious. There are some games every week where I'm like, I just want to know what happens. Most of the time, I feel like I got a pretty good idea what's going to happen. And like I said, with this game, a couple weeks ago, I thought I had a pretty good idea what was going to happen, but that's the beauty of high school football. Things change. I mean, we're talking about 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds. Things change quickly. Sometimes things click with the young players. Anyways, I'm excited to find out what happens in that one. And speaking of Frontenac, a guy who sees plenty of the Raiders, Mike Snow from ESPN 100.7. He's going to join us after the break to talk Southeast Kansas football, a little bit of Southwest Missouri football, some college football. He knows a lot. He's around the area just like we are, and he's probably, like I said earlier, going to make fun of me for wearing makeup.
Neosho Memorial in Chanute welcomes another outstanding general surgeon to its surgery center. Dr. Law joins surgeons in the field of urology, orthopedics, women's health, and general surgery. Neosho Memorial in Chanute, offering the latest technology close to home.
The advisors at McGavran Financial Group have been helping people invest today for a more enjoyable tomorrow since 1984. In Joplin, see Earl or Mike. In Pittsburgh, see Earl or Steve. McGavran Financial Group. Invest today. Enjoy tomorrow.
All right, we're joined now by Mike Snow from ESPN 100.7, a guy who frequently makes fun of me for wearing makeup. I appreciate you being out here, man.
No, you're my favorite guy in makeup that talks sports, and I mean that. How many times have Chet and I had you on the show to talk football?
Yeah,
Several.
A few. And you mentioned the fact that I wear makeup every single one of them.
Yeah, and you're my second favorite person from Yates Center.
Next to
Tim McCullough.
Okay, we'll get to that in a second. But I want to, we just got done talking about Frontenac. 2 wins the last 2 weeks. A few weeks ago they got shut out by Girard, and I was at that game, and that was not a pretty football game. But the last 2 weeks they've, looks like something has come together for them. As a guy who sees them, what's changed the last few weeks?
Mark Smith, more time with guys that are inexperienced. When you think about camp, preseason practice, basically everybody but Mario has never played any varsity time at all other than filling in here or there, any main guy, especially up front. Girard overwhelmed him because Girard's strength is and Frontenac's weaknesses are a mismatch, so it's going to be difficult for them to match up with anybody that's good up front. Like the Galena game in a couple of weeks could be a lot of issues, bring up a lot of issues for Frontenac. But down there in the Columbus, it was nothing. Both teams turned it over on downs, and then all of a sudden the defense started making plays. They kept scoring, and you keep thinking, okay, 14-0, 19-0. Is Columbus going to make a run here? Which they did the first drive of the third quarter, and it ended up 35-8. You've seen some flashes of it early on at Bishop Ward when they came back, had the nice drive to score, and then got the pick six. That was a game, Jacob, they were outplayed, probably 45 minutes of that game, other than that little 3-minute stretch. And, it comes down to coaching and the kids just figuring it out. If you've never played on a Friday night, as you know, it takes you a while to figure that out. Yeah,
one of the things we do predictions for our Pigskin preview, try to predict records. And Frontenac this year, like last year, I was like, I knew what they had. This year, it was like, I know it's going to be a bunch of new guys, but I also know that Mark Smith is going to have those guys looking totally different from the beginning of the year to the end of the year.
Yep, and the quarterback play, he does a really good job at developing quarterbacks. Usually we see the biggest improvement from their junior year when they start as a first-year starter, Peyton Brown, Brandon Malikas. If you look at their stats, how much better they became from juniors to seniors. Well, Cal Turlip's figured it out after a couple of, I wouldn't say bad games, but again, just adjusting to the speed. The last couple of games, he's been very efficient, had 4 touchdown passes against Columbus, and, nothing flashy. They're not going to spread you out and throw it 50 times, but Mark just has a way about him with play calling. You go back to that Holton game last year in the semifinals. I mean, there was a couple of those plays. It was just flat out magical.
The game I was at last week, I was at Galena hosting Parsons. I don't know if you had a chance to look at that one or check that one out. But, I was at Parsons was up 13-0 at halftime, and then Galena, I swear, made that thing a boxing match in the second half. I mean, I told Bo during the second half, I said, you've made this look like a Galena high school football game.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tyler Little has probably been the best player in the CNC by far. Physical, some of those runs he had. There was a run against Columbus. He stiff-armed 3 guys running around the left side. I mean, that's big time. And I asked Bo, I do his coach's corner each week. I'm like, how come you haven't handed him the ball before this year? I mean, they threw it to him before, but just snapping it to him and get a hat on a hat up front, that's tough to stop.
Yeah, they threw a Zane Turner, the quarterback there, threw up one early in that game as the first half, and it was one of those, I don't know if he was looking, but I know he knew that Tyler was down there somewhere.
Yep.
This week, I'm going to be on the Missouri side. We have Carthage Joplin, which is a big one, and these two teams, I know you know some Southwest Missouri stuff. Coach Guidey always always has that offense rolling and has a monster in Luke Gall, back there. I guess talk about that one.
Yeah, Luke Gall is unbelievable, and they're kind of a one-man show. I don't mean that any disrespect to the rest of the players, but he is so good and so dominant in that league. You take him and Ramon Green, they could play for a lot of teams at the next level. I mean, I know probably Brian Wright and Atiba Bradley would be lined up to have both of them because they are difference makers. Luke Gall is just your All-American kid. It's so fitting that he's going to Air Force. But what Curtis Jasper has done at Joplin, you've been here when Joplin was you just said, they're playing, they're going to lose 45-0, 45-7, maybe put up a few points, but they're going to get blown out. And to put in perspective what Curtis Jasper has done and why I don't count them out in this game, I think Carthage is favored, but Joplin has a chance. Is you look at when he came, they were really a joke, the laughing stock of Class 6 football and Southwest Missouri football. They moved to the COC, and they beat Webb City 4 straight years. Webb City hasn't lost to the same team since Mount Vernon in the early 80s, and they lost to them 3 straight times. John Roderick, you retweeted it the other day from last year. Won his 300th, only lost 29. Right now, he's lost 32 games total in his career. 4 of those have been to Joplin. Think about that. That's crazy into Curtis Jasper. So, I think Luke Gall will be the difference, just like he was against Webb City. But haven't you been surprised? It's kind of the same thing we said about Frontenac, about the Joplin Eagles, because their defense has been really good. They returned 2 guys, the 2 linebackers, and that's it. And they've held Webb City to 8 points. And I know Webb City made a lot of mistakes, but Joplin's defense had a lot to do with that as well.
Yeah, I talk about Curtis Jasper all the time to people, outside of the area. I'm like, I don't know how to explain it to people who aren't around the program.
Right.
Because you talk to every single one of the players and they believe everything
right.
that he tells them, and it's super rare. Another game this week, Webb City's on the road against Neosho, and that's a game in the past that I probably wouldn't talk about on this podcast
right.
the last few years, but Neosho has we talked about this earlier on this podcast. They got the leading rusher in the state, They have the leading passer in the state, and they have the leading receiver in the state. They're putting up, I think it's like 560 yards per game, and that's a situation where I'm not going to sit here and say Neosho's going to win, but I mean, that's one where I feel like that Webb City defense better be awake on Friday night.
Yeah, Webb City's kind of been decimated with injuries. They're 4-3 now. They were 4-3 a year ago, and they went on to win the state championship. I don't think it's the same type of 4-3 just due to the Washington kids out. Seems like every week you hear about them losing another lineman. They were going to be kind of light in the shorts up front anyway, and then you lose a couple of guys. It'll be interesting to see how they match up with them defensively and what kind of wrinkles they put into their defense to match up with Neosho. Because the thing is, Webb City may or may not be able to stop them, but I guarantee you Neosho's defense, their numbers are as equally as bad as there is in the COC. They're not going to be able to stop Webb City. And Quentin Hughes, the quarterback at Neosho, I've known the kid since he was 9 years old. He's been a head and shoulders taller than at 9, 10, 11, and 12, and works his tail off. And, I mean, he's got a chance. Great footwork, unbelievable arm. And, I think that offense, The Lions played good. They ran the ball well, but I think it all starts with him. And if you had asked him or Coach Towdy, I don't think anybody would have put money on him throwing and putting up the numbers that he has. But I'm happy for him. Great kid.
I want to talk about college now. Not so much the game, but the players and the kids, because I've been doing this a few years now, and I always tell people one of my favorite parts of doing what we do for a long period of time is seeing these kids go from 15, 16, can't talk into the microphone, don't know how to handle the camera, to we get guys like PJ Sarwinski and Brandon Malikas and Alex Gaskill, Webb City kid. They're the faces, they're the captains of a local college team. Talk about that. Is that something that you enjoy, I guess, as much
absolutely.
as me?
Alex Gaskill, I had him on, I do a Guerrilla Game Day show 2 hours before kickoff on 100.7 on Saturdays, and I have a player from a member of the offense and the defense. Mainly, Dan Wilkes and Coach Wright wanted to give those guys some, chance for phone interviews just to kind of get used to that. So I had Alex Gaskill on. He told me a story. I didn't know this. He didn't go to Webb City until he was a sophomore. He was at Cassville before then, and think of how good those Cassville teams were, and they lost him. They won a lot of games without him. But yeah, PJ, again, I graduated high school. Bo was a year younger than me. We both went to Columbus. His dad was my coach and everything from the time I was 7, 8 years old. So our families were really close, and I've watched PJ grow up. And yeah, the first year of Guerrilla Game Day, we had him on a couple of years ago. Wasn't very comfortable with it, and he was on last week, and I mean, he's just kind of flipped the switch. And you look at what he's been able to do. Tall, skinny kid, played quarterback, changed his body not once but twice, got put on a lot of weight and muscle for the first staff he played for at Pittsburgh State, then slendered down and got more speed. And if we'd have said here on this podcast 4 years ago, if it was a thing and said PJ is going to be first team All-MIAA and All-American, everybody would have laughed us off the internet. But the bottom line is he's the definition of hard work. Brandon Malikas, the same way. Gaskill, in my opinion, had a little bit more God-given ability, but he works hard. I'm not taking that away, but he started with a little bit more, in my opinion, than what Malikas and PJ did. Malikas was a receiver at Frontenac Junior High that ran in the plays, never touched the football, didn't really develop as a football player until Mark Smith became his coach.
I want to ask you, I know, you call the games for Pittsburgh State and you're there for Pittsburgh State every week, but Missouri Southern has some momentum, and I really feel like has the right guy over there. What's been your interaction with Atiba Bradley? And I guess talk about that program.
Yeah, I was happy. A good friend of mine, Kevin Grime, was part of that hiring committee, and I thought they got it right. He's a Joplin guy. He's believable. He has understanding for Southwest Missouri and the COC. Look at his starting lineups. I mean, there's a lot of guys that you cover in the COC and in the Big 8 in Southeast Kansas and Southwest Missouri, and I think that's key to get the fans involved. And then, he's building it from the ground up, get 1% better. All the little cliches that we all kind of roll our eyes out in the media when they talk about, but he's living it, and I'm excited for him. I know we're the voice of Pitt State, but I have a lot of friends. Little fun fact, when Kevin Grime was the voice of Missouri Southern back, this was probably like 02 to probably 06 or 07, I would fill in because he also had assistant athletic duties. So he would go for weekend conferences, and I would ride with Jim Henry, of all people, to Missouri Western and call a game. I went to Washburn and called some MIAA basketball games. So, yeah, I'm excited for him. I don't want him to ever beat Pitt State, but them getting good, can you imagine, if they're the top 2-3 teams in the MIAA, how exciting it'd be for our area right now?
Oh, I've been waiting. I love that. And
yeah.
You talk about coaching cliches and stuff. One of the things that I've talked about this on the podcast was when Atiba Bradley took that job. He was so open and so upfront about where the program was. And then we went over there for the preseason this year. It was like his attitude and how he spoke kind of changed, and it was like more confident. And that was my first, that was the first time that I was like, oh, yeah, we might be going somewhere soon.
Yeah, he's very believable, and that's something that program hasn't had for a while. You know what I mean? That's not a shot. That's a fact. I mean, if he was sitting in here with us right now and said, "This is how we're going to do it. We're going to rebuild the TV station or the radio station in these 3 steps," I'd follow him. I mean, wouldn't you?
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Now, so we talked football. Do you want to get into some Tim McCullough nonsense?
Yeah. Can you tell me the story? Is that appropriate for podcast?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Tease. Yeah. Yes. So I'm old enough now that I feel like I can tell this story. You asked me about a Tim Mcauliffe story. And for those who don't know Tim Mcauliffe, he's a teacher in Yates Center for a long time. Like
Guarantee you've seen him.
Yeah, you know who he is, even
Yes.
if you don't know who he
Yes.
is. He's the guy that you can hear wherever you are in the stadium.
Exactly.
Right. So he taught my mom at Yates Center High School, and then he taught me, and then my sister after me. But I think it was 6th grade. I was acting up in his class, but I don't remember what. I remember why, but I'm not going to say why. And he goes, "Leonard, shut up." And I didn't shut up. And he said, "Go stand in the corner." And I'm like 6th grade, like old enough for this to be embarrassing,
Right.
So I go over and I just lean up in the corner with my back, facing the class. And I'm just sitting there and I'm still kind of clowning around a little bit. And he goes, "No, turn around, put your nose in the corner." And that I was sweating. Really? I had to stand in the corner in 6th grade with my nose in the corner, and I was like, I felt everybody's eyes in the back of my head, and I was sitting there sweating. I was like, this sucks. I know.
He's lightened up a lot. Can I tell my Tim Mcauliffe story?
He probably doesn't even remember that because he's done so much.
Right.
But yeah, he's probably put so many kids in the corner. But I remember. Yeah, go ahead.
I have one that I can't tell on here, but I'll tell the one that I can tell. So years ago, when I believe it was the football season of 2006, Arkansas and LSU at that time were still playing in Little Rock. Tim and I and a few other friends went to the game. And as we're driving in town, we drive by War Memorial Stadium. Well, Kevin Trainer, who's a Fredonia kid, who's the SID and assistant athletic director at Arkansas, I knew him a little bit, so I sent him an email. We had tickets. I just wanted a parking pass because that stadium, if you're not familiar, it's in the middle of a park and a golf course. You literally park. Only the SEC you'd park on a fairway next to the green. So the parking is really, really bad. So I drive by, and the whole time Tim's, "There it is. Where are you going? This is too far out of the way." He's like having a panic attack. Like, "We're not going to make it. We're going to get stuck in traffic. What are you doing?" So I go across town to the Marriott, go into the desk. They leave it at the concierge, a parking pass. Put it in the car. We drive. And literally the front bumper of the car was up against the stadium. And our entrance was closer than the conference room door we're sitting in here right now. And after he, called me everything all the way there and all the way back, he said, "Oh, this is pretty cool. Sorry for the comment." So that's why every time we see Tim Mcauliffe, sorry for the comment.
Yeah, he always, anytime I see him, he always makes the point to tell people around. He goes, "He's not this cool guy you think he is. He was a goober in junior high or whatever."
Yeah, no doubt.
So no, it's a lot of fun. But I appreciate you taking the time to come on. And one more thing, I told my wife a story. I don't remember. I'm sure it was good. I don't remember why I was talking about you, but I told her your name was Mike Snow, and this is something that you already know. But now she couldn't remember your name, and I brought you up later, and she said, "Are you talking about Matt Sand?" And so now, anytime we see you, she always says, "Hey, it's Matt Sand."
Yeah, well, that's better than what most people call me. So.
you'll take it, right?
Yeah.
All right, Matt Sand. I appreciate you coming on. I'm sure we'll see you out there soon.
Yep. Thanks, Jacob.
Did you know that Jock Stitch Sporting Goods can provide your team with fully custom uniforms? With over 35 years of experience, the experts at Jock Stitch can set your team up with the best-looking uniforms and apparel at the most competitive price possible. Specializing in discounts for your school, booster club, coaching staff, club teams, or business, you won't find a better solution. See how Jock Stitch can help your team at the corner of 6th and Broadway in downtown Pittsburgh or online at jocksnitch.com.
Sporting goods from Jock Stitch.
That's totally not a joke, by the way. My wife, she literally called him Matt Sand, and it was really, really funny because she was very serious. And so now I'm serious. Anytime we see him, I'm never going to call him Mike ever again for the rest of my life. It's always going to be, "What's up, Matt Sand?" Okay, to the college level now. We just talked about college a little bit, but the last week Missouri Southern beat Lincoln 37-14. The Lions now 4-2 overall this season. They took. If you've watched MIAA football, they should have won that game, and they did win that game against Lincoln. But some of these local guys, I swear I'm going to say the same thing on this podcast every week, and sometimes multiple times in the podcast. I love seeing these local guys stick around at local colleges and do good things. Nathan Glades, former Joplin High School running back from Missouri Southern on Saturday, 98 yards and a touchdown against Lincoln. Coleman Booker is East Newton in the house. East Newton kid. 6 tackles, also had an interception for Missouri Southern. Colton Winder, a Carthage kid, had 5 tackles and 2 interceptions. We, if you watch us on TV, you know Jalen Banks is one of our reporters and anchors on the weekends for us. He used to play quarterback at Missouri Southern, so he got to line up against a lot of these guys that play defense for Missouri Southern. It was just like last year he was playing quarterback for Missouri Southern, and he's like Colton. I don't know how Colton Winder does some of the things that he does. He could explain it in more football terms. But, he said Colton Winder is a really, really good football player and, does some things that he said that linebackers shouldn't really be able to do. I love this guy. 5 tackles, 2 picks against Lincoln. I always check in on these local guys, even when I'm not there, even when they're on the road. Another local guy in that game, Solomon Garcia, former Joplin High School standout, 5 tackles, had a tackle for loss. And Richard Jordan Jr., I don't know how to explain this. He's not really a local guy, but he feels like a local guy to me. Like when I see him, I'm like, yeah, that's a local guy. That's one of our guys from the area. But he led the team with 8 tackles on Saturday against Lincoln. That linebacker group, I think I've said this probably here. I freaking love that linebacker group over there at Missouri Southern. Coleman, Colton, Richard Jordan Jr., just a bunch of tough guys. They all, PJ Sarwinski, Alex Gaskill, like we just talked about, they all kind of make me feel the same. They're just really tough, really smart, really hardworking guys. And man, seeing those local guys be so good at the college level, I love it. Of course, Pittsburgh State, top 10 battle against Northwest Missouri State last weekend. Pittsburgh State won that 24-22. They got a late 2-point conversion stop with, I think it was 12 seconds to go to preserve that 24-22 lead. A couple things here. The first half, they were up 21-3 at halftime. Yeah, that's what it was. I was like, this could be ugly. I mean, it was exciting. I was like, I don't care. You know what? It's a local team against a non-local team. I was like, let's get ugly. Let's go. Let's make it ugly. Give me more stuff to talk about on TV. But quarterback Chad Dodson for Pittsburgh State, 263 yards in the first half and 3 touchdowns against that defense. And in my mind, at halftime of that game, I thought, this guy is going to put himself as the front runner as the offensive player of the year in this league because he just put up 260 and 3 touchdowns on Northwest Missouri. And I mean, he threw some dimes, threw some nice balls. Had 3 touchdowns to 3 different guys, Colby Katzis, Devin Garrison, and Bryce Murphy. Speaking of a local guy, Bryce Murphy, Neosho High School. Then the second half, it was a little bit of a different story. The Gorillas had less than 30 yards of offense, something like that. It was less than 30, and they survived. That defense, man, they put a lot on that defense in the second half. That Pittsburgh State defense, that defense, they were gassed. They had to reach down and come up with that final play, and even that final play on that 2-point conversion, that was a super, super close to being converted. From my angle, people have asked me, can I see the video? Can I see your video of that last 2-point conversion? Did he have a foot in? Did he have possession? From my angle, he had a foot in, but it looked like the referee from the opposite side came in and saw a bobble and, kind of pointed. And then the guy on the ground didn't really argue. So from my view, I guess he must have bobbled it on the way down because it really looked like he had a foot in. I don't know exactly what the fine. It doesn't matter. It was last weekend. Game's over. It's 24-22. Pitt State wins. They're still undefeated. PJ Sarwinski, kid I just talked about, 9 tackles, team high, had 1 sack. He earned himself MIAA Defensive Player of the Week this week for the Pittsburgh State Gorillas. Brandon Malikas, Frontenac kid, 8 tackles. Gorillas had 4 sacks as a team. They did a good job of getting after the quarterback, especially there in that first half, putting pressure on him. And then Cross Holmes, I want to talk about him for a little bit. Kicker for Pittsburgh State. This is, as the season goes on, people are going to talk about, that 2-point conversion stop and so the 3 first half touchdowns and how that was just enough to give him enough cushion. But this kick from Cross Holmes, great kid, by the way. I love this guy, too. He kicked a 45. Nothing was working. Nothing was going right on offense for Pittsburgh State. This dude kicked a 45-yard field goal. I think there's a little over 4 minutes to go, and that put the Pitt State lead to, it was 21-16. That put it to 24-16. It was such a clutch kick to put them back up 8. And ultimately, I mean, you saw what happened at the end of that football game. Northwest went down and scored again, and they were a 2-point conversion away from tying this thing up and sending it to overtime. And asked the Pitt State defense if they wanted to go to overtime against Northwest Missouri. The answer is no. Nobody wanted to see overtime. They came up with that one play. But that kick from Cross Holmes, such a clutch kick. I was standing right below the goalpost. He nailed it. It was beautiful. And I heard him on the sideline. I don't even think he knows that I heard him talking to one of the other kickers. I don't remember who he was talking to, but he said, man, I was just praying that went in. It was a beautiful kick. He's a great kicker. And, as they get, down at the end of the season, and I imagine he's going to continue to be important for Pittsburgh State. Clutch kick, huge kick for Pittsburgh State. I don't want people to forget about that kick because it was a big play. All right, the Gorillas are on the road against Lincoln this week. After that, it's Missouri Western, Central Oklahoma, Washburn, and Fort Hays State. And if you're a Pittsburgh State fan, you're looking at that thinking, can we run the table? You can. The answer is yeah, you could. But also, if you're a Pittsburgh State fan, some of these games you're like are legit scary. I don't know what it is about Washburn. Even that national championship year, I think Washburn beat Pittsburgh State back in 11 by like 14 in the regular season. Now they turned around and hammered them in the playoffs. I don't know what it is about Washburn. Even last year, we're not going to talk about last year's Washburn game. We won't do it, but it's always Washburn. I have friends that went to Washburn. I can't stand when Washburn wins that game because I always get text messages from people who used to work here, friends I went to high school with that went to Washburn. I want to send the messages on Washburn week. I don't want to be receiving the messages. Anyways, it's fun, but Pittsburgh State, 5 games to go. They're 6-0. They stayed in the same spot. They're still number 7 in the national rankings. The top 7 or 8 teams in the national rankings didn't move. Nobody lost. So Pittsburgh State still number 7. All right, we're done. Football shows. Don't forget to join us Friday night on KOM at 10:20 for 4 State Friday night. That's just the second half of the 10 o'clock news. We have about 12 to 15 minutes of high school football highlights and scores. Then the big one, Fox 14 at 11 o'clock on Friday night for Press Box. That's a 30-minute show. Danny Terzer and I go out. We talk about Southeast Kansas, Southwest Missouri, Northeast Oklahoma, college, whatever. Performance of the week. It's 30 minutes. It's all football. Gives you time to get home from the games. It's at 11 o'clock on Fox 14. Again, that's Press Box on Fox 14 at 11. Join us. It's a little bit of a looser show. We know who we're talking to at 11. We know that, we're not stumbling into, the regular news viewer. We know we got football fans on there at 11 o'clock, so it's a little more fun show than most of the other shows we do around here. One more time, thanks to our sponsors, Jock's Niche, Carnes Pro Tire, Neosho Memorial Regional Medical Center, and McGavran Financial Group. We really appreciate the support. Thanks for letting us do this, and thanks for supporting local sports. You, go support your local high school football teams on Friday night. Go support your college teams on Saturday then. Watch us on TV when you get home. We're done.
Rough Country is at Carnes Pro Tire. Complement your truck or Jeep with a new Rough Country lift kit or protect your truck with a retractable or tri-fold bed cover. Only at Carnes Pro Tire and Auto Center, just south of Baxter Springs.
Thank you for listening to KOAM Presents. For the latest content and local news, weather, and sports, please go to koamnewsnow.com.